We are live now.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. My name is Pauline Proch, Chair of the School Committee, and welcome to the School Committee's meeting of April 1st. Before I open the meeting, I usually like to provide an outline. Steve, we can hear you.
I can't hear anything.
Hey, Steve, we can hear you. Perhaps somebody could just message Steve to let him know that we can hear him, and maybe he can sort out his sound. I'd like to just give notice before the meeting for public comment. Public comment is the first item every meeting on the agenda. And in order to participate in public comment, you are required to either access the Zoom link through the town government site that posts the agenda, or you can go onto the school site. You do need to request access to the Zoom meeting. You will come on as a guest. And then Jen Erickson, if you raise your hand or if you write in the chat that you have a question or a comment rather, sorry, for public comment, then we can recognize you. Public comment is just that. It is up to a 3-minute opportunity for a comment. It is unfortunately not a dialogue. So, but we are always interested.
No, I still can't hear anything.
Somebody, if you could please let Steve maybe to sign off and come back in. Thank you. And maybe we should mute his sound if you can. And so we always invite the public to have public comment. And I'm saying this slowly so it gives people time to actually come onto the meeting. And I'm about to begin the meeting. Hopefully you can hear me now, Steve. This is Pauline Proch, Chair of the School Committee in Nantucket. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. School committee members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Zona Butler?
Here.
Thank you, Zona. Tim Lepre?
Present.
Thank you. Steve Sordovec? Steve Sordovec?
I had this problem earlier today and resolved it, but I can't find a settings location to try to change it. So I still can't hear anything any of you are saying.
Okay. Logan, I'm going to ask you if you would please private chat Steve and ask him to come out and come back in. And hopefully that will work. And okay, and so we know that Steve is present, and I shall continue. And hopefully we can resolve the sound issue for Steve. Staff who is presenting tonight, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Superintendent Elizabeth Hallett.
Present.
Thank you. Lily Walden.
Here.
Thank you. Jennifer Rabel.
Here.
Thank you. Welcome, Jennifer. Maddie Vassell.
Here.
Hi. Logan O'Connor.
Present.
And Jen Erickson.
Present.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And as we are working out the sound system still for Steve Sordovec, I'd like to get an approval, please, for the agenda. May I have an approval?
So moved.
Excuse me, you know what? I'm sorry, I meant to make an amendment to the agenda. I would actually ask this committee to make an amendment to move the votes up after public comment, please. And then we will hear presentations after. May I have an approval for the amended agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Zona Butler. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Zona, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve Sotovic, are you on and can you hear us? He's not. Pauline Proch, aye.
It says he's still connecting, and I've messaged him, and so has Mr. Horton. So hopefully he'll get it together in a minute.
Yes. Okay. There he is. I would like to get him to approve the agenda. So if you all just be patient with us just for a moment, please. Great, I see that, Jen, thank you. I just want to get the agenda approved if I can before we go to public comment. Steve, can you hear me? Steve, can you hear me?
Actually, now I can.
Okay, so please confirm in the affirmative you can hear me and that you accept the agenda with the amendment that we have moved votes above the presentations.
I do accept that, but I would also suggest that if only 3 of us are here at the time, that we skip over our review of the school committee.
I agree. Yes, we'd like to have that when we are a full committee.
I motion for that third amendment.
Thank you, Sona. May I have a second? Thank you. Tim, may I have your vote? Tim, may I have your vote, please? Thank you. Steve?
Aye.
Thank you, Zona.
Aye.
Thank you, Pauline. Aye. Okay, moving on. We have some comments from the public, Jen?
I have a message from Kelly Cooney that the Anti-Racial Instructional Leadership Team has a public comment.
Terrific. Welcome, Kelly.
Am I allowed to give a public comment as a member of that team? But
You may.
For the team. Okay, thank you. It is from the Instructional Leadership Team, the Anti-Racism Instructional Leadership Team. And I will read, and it was crafted by the team. It says, to our colleagues on the school committee, we have taken the time to reflect individually and as a group upon the school committee meeting that occurred on March 18th, 2021. We appreciate the opportunity both to present our work to the school committee and to encourage growth and learning as part of our educational institution. The work that we are doing is predicated upon facing uncomfortable realities and having difficult conversations to ensure equitable opportunities and experiences for all of our students and families. We remain committed to our mission and we are open to participating in these challenging conversations as we model a growth mindset for our students. We are willing to embrace the challenges that will support equitable opportunities for all. To Zona, we are grateful for your voice and hope that we have truly heard you about your experiences. We hope to honor your perspective by calling to action the teachers, administrators, and community to understand the inequity within our system. We are committed to the truths of our students and families, both by evaluating the data-driven realities of our successes and failures, and by listening to and holding up the experience of our BIPOC students, families, and community members. Jen and Steve, we heard your feedback as well, and we appreciate the time you have dedicated as school committee members. In order to best serve our students and families, we would like to ask for clarification on your comments. A comment was made that we as a committee should be careful in our work, and we respectfully ask the committee or committee member to clarify what we need to be careful about when we're presenting data about our district. And going back to Zona, we mean to say also, thank you for sharing your experience. And as allies, we say we're doing our best to help. Dr. Lepre, although we understand you were unable to attend school committee the evening of our presentation, we hope that you were able to review our documents on your own time or perhaps view the recording of what was missed. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, please share them with us. And then last but not least, Pauline, as committee chairperson, we would like to draw your attention to the resource, the mask resolution that the Nantucket Public Schools adopted in June of 2020, in which it was stated that Nantucket Public Schools would commit itself, the school committee would commit itself to professional development related to anti-racism. And we just want to thank you for all of your efforts. And we hope that this is something that we can work on together moving forward.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Any other public comments, Jen? Seeing none?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, as the amended agenda, I will move to go to our first vote, and I need to read this into the minutes, please. I'm looking for an approval to vote request to authorize transfer of money from Nantucket Agency account 7670003478 to Nantucket High School Student Activities account 049-76277 in order to facilitate the balance transfer request made by the class officers Rosha Kelly and Caitlin Belanger on behalf of the class of 2020. May I have a vote approval, please?
Move acceptance.
And a second? I think I had Zona move and Steve move. So Tim, thank you. Tim, may I have your vote, please? Tim, I've lost you off the screen. Are you there? Yeah, having some technical difficulties tonight, aren't we? Okay, giving time. Steve, may I have your vote, please?
Aye.
Thank you. Zona?
Aye.
Thank you. Pauline, aye. And may I see, can I see Tim? See Tim. Oh. Okay. Nope, I don't see him. Okay, moving on. We can do a vote with 3 members. I believe we have a quorum. So I'm going to move forward with the votes and hopefully Tim will come back and join us. A vote to approve the donation from Jean F. and David G. Nathan Fund, care of the Boston Foundation, to the Nantucket Community School, to the community pool for $300. May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Steve. Second, thank you. And Steve, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Zona?
Aye.
Still no Tim. Okay, and Pauline, aye. Thank you. May I have a approval for the minutes to the March 18th, 2021 meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Zona. May I have your vote, Steve?
Aye.
Thank you. Zona, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. And Pauline Proch, aye. May I have an approval, please, to accept the transfers and invoices?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. May I have your vote, Steve?
Aye.
Thank you. Zona?
Aye.
Thank you. And Pauline, aye. Thank you, everybody. That was a little clumsy, but we got there. Okay, I'd like to invite Dr. Hallett, please, for her superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to start with some updates about Commissioner Riley's return to school and our impending return on April 5th for our elementary and intermediate schools. So as we all know, Governor Baker and Commissioner Riley mandated all public schools to return to 100% in-person learning in a phased-in approach with grades K through 5 beginning in school on Monday, April 5th, and middle school starting on Wednesday, April 28th. There's still no verdict on high school, but as a side note, we did learn today that the commissioner will be recommending to the State Board of Education that MCAS for 11th graders be canceled and the competency determination be awarded based on course completion for this class. So not really an update related to the return to school, but certainly something that we are happy to hear. Some of our parents have decided, after we have sent surveys out to everyone, some have decided that they still would like their children to remain in Cohort D, which is our remote learning cohort at this time. So we will continue to educate this group of students remotely. You have all received our return to in-person learning plan, which now has been sent to the public. We have sent it today to staff and families, and it is updated, excuse me, it is up on our website. In English, Spanish, and Portuguese. This returning plan is based on the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's guidance that was released on March 9th. Some of the changes that are addressed in the plan include adjusting the distance in the classrooms from 6 feet to 3 to 6 feet, some protocols around lunches, updated district and building-based safety protocols, and a few other things as well. We have also provided an addendum to the plan that includes some specifics around quarantining and travel. Diane O'Neill and the facilities team have been working hard this week and will continue to work over the weekend to prepare our classrooms with additional desks and tables that are distanced at a minimum of 3 feet, seat edge to seat edge at NES and NIS. Since lunches must be eaten with students still at 6 feet apart, we are now using alternative locations for lunch, such as cafeteria, which hadn't been used before, grade level clusters, and outdoor spaces on good weather days. We have posted new positions for lunch and recess monitors to assist at NES and NIS. Eventually, we will also need them for CPS and NHS as well. With the arrival of more students in our buildings, we know that arrival and dismissal might be a little bit more challenging, but we also have more bus capacity with all 6 buses back in use, which is great. We are able to accommodate a little over 300 children, which is very close to our capacity prior to COVID, which was, or our ridership was, which was around 360. So we're actually in pretty good shape compared to where we were prior to COVID. Schools will clearly be reviewing all health and safety protocols with students and staff in the first few days, and it will be very important that schools take strict stances on making sure that there's compliance, especially with children closer than 6 feet apart. It will be really important that these protocols are observed 100% of the time. We created an addendum, as I mentioned, around quarantine and travel protocols as well. And this addresses how we will quarantine students, we will quarantine classes, excuse me, pods, or even schools and the district if it is necessary. The decision to quarantine a whole class will be determined by the number of students within that class who have tested positive for COVID-19 and the situation around the close contacts in that class. Our school nurses and Sarah Brooks, our COVID liaison, have really become experts in determining what is the best situation and the best decision for quarantine. I'm very glad to have them, to be able to trust them with this, with the assistance in this decision. If it is evidence that school spread is occurring and a school might need to be quarantined, the final decision about closing a school or quarantining a school will come from Roberto Santamaria, and DZ must also be involved in the decision. Overall, we are excited to welcome back more students into our classrooms safely, and I thank everyone who has been involved, individuals and teams that have worked on the revisions to our plan and our return to school. So now I'd like to share with you the district report card. So I'm going to share my screen if that's possible. See if I'm able to do that correctly. I hope everyone can see that. Can someone confirm? Yeah, okay, great. So you've received in your packet the 2019-20 district report card. This is probably a little later than when you have normally seen this document. Almost all of the information laid out in this document is taken from the Department of Elementary and Secondary District Profiles pages from their website. I'd like to begin by thanking Jennifer Raybold, who is really the person behind this document. Although I'm presenting it, she's the one who did a lot of the work along with other folks that she collected information from. So I thank her for her work on this kind of beast of a document, but it is a really great place to see all of this information in one spot. So I'd like to share a few points of interest and some changes. And first, I want to remind you that the data that we see in this report card is from last year, not from this year. And some of the data is different, truncated a little bit, because remember, our school closures began in March. So we have some data for in some cases, and other data that is only really based on what we have available between the beginning of the year and March, when our closure happened. So in looking at page 1, I just want to share that we have some bullets here at the bottom with school and district accountability information. And you will notice that we have 4 new bullets. These are new pieces that we wanted to share this year. They are access to broad and challenging coursework. We thought that was interesting and important to share. Student attendance and discipline, high school outcomes for post-secondary enrollment, and finance. So those are some pieces that we kept in, or that we added in this year. Each page at the top has a direct link, and I'll show you as we move forward. Each page has a direct link about where the data came from, particularly that goes right back to the Department of Education website, so that you can actually click right on it and see. So in this page, this is page 3 and 4, we're looking at district and school enrollment. Last year, we ended our year at 1,666 students. The graphs show you enrollment by school over the last 5 years. And then in our next page here, we added the screenshots of the actual information that came straight from the DZ website, and it breaks it down in the chart below by school. So in looking now at page 4, at page 5, we're now getting into our English learners. The graph shows enrollment trend over the last 14 years, and where we are percentage-wise in the district below. So you'll see that at the end of 2020, we were at 16.3%, which is higher than the state average. So we definitely have a higher percentage per the student population. Access is the only standardized test that actually was completed before the closure. So we do have data from 2019-20. So here is our data. This has been presented by Kelly Cooney already. You've seen this in October. I believe that's when it was in the fall. And we did very well at a district level with 64% of our students making progress, which is excellent. Moving forward, you'll see the number of students in this chart who reached attainment and were able to be reclassified as former English learners. And this is a breakdown by school. And then also you will see a chart that gives the levels that our students were in for the 1920 school year. Moving on, you'll see special education numbers. Our district numbers are at 16% in 2020, definitely our highest year. The state is at 18.7, so we are still below the state with our percentage. Homeschooled students by grade level, a report was given earlier by Mrs. Logan O'Connor, and we also have our numbers directly from the Department of Education website. Moving on, you will see our teachers and classroom information, which shares the information around licensed teachers, average class sizes, and student-teacher ratio, which are excellent compared to the state. We're in great shape. And then below are the degrees of our teachers, teaching assistants, and administrators, so you can get an idea of the advanced degrees that have been that our teachers and our teaching assistants have, and administrators have attained. Moving on, this is the page where we would have started explaining or given an option to explain the accountability and percentile rankings. But as you see, we didn't receive accountability and percentile ratings for the 2019-20 school year due to the cancellation of our state assessments. We assume that this will be the case for next year as well. The same situation is true for the MCAS results. We did not have MCAS MCAS in spring. And so we do not have any data to share. However, we do have data when it comes to SAT, ACT, and advanced placement scores. So this is the average of SAT scores for the class of 2020, and you can see our comparison to the state in evidence-based reading and writing, math, and writing and language, and then our chart, which breaks down by subgroups. Moving on, you'll see the ACT average scores by subject and advanced places. The composite is right there, 22.3, and then our advanced placement results that come right from the Department of Ed website show how our students achieved on AP tests. We then have some budget pages here. You have seen these already in our budget presentations during the budget process in November and December, and then further on in the new year. So I'm going to speed through these and get us to our newer page here, student attendance. So, so this is new information, and these charts are to share about, this is some important information around student attendance, and then how it's broken down by subgroup. This is also the same for student discipline. This is helpful for us to really understand and dig deeper into what we are seeing with regard to students attending school, and then also discipline. So important information that we wanted to also share. Moving forward, high school completion. We have a general chart here that came from our, this information came from, again, the Department of Education, but we also added some more detailed information in subsequent charts coming through. You will see these screenshotted charts here that is really directly from the Department of Ed's website. Finally, we see an overall summary here of 4-year graduation rate, 5-year graduation rate, dropout, and mass core completion. Future plans for our students in the class of 2020. This explains and shows their choices and where they're planning to spend their time after they graduated. And then we have some extracurricular and club lists here to show what they were involved with during the year. And finally, we have the very impressive list of college and university acceptances, which I always look at and think how amazing this is to see all of the schools where our students were accepted, and many where they are currently attending. So the next part is we have our summaries on technology department uses and projects that have been completed, and the same also for facilities. The athletic department has shared a summary for their year with some of the great successes that they had, and also specific details about teams that had some great records and again, successes, and also some student athletes that made, that certainly hit some important milestones and records as well. And that's it. So I'm going to just do enrollment quickly, and then I'll answer any questions. So let me stop sharing my screen. See if I can do that. There we go. Okay, so for enrollment, we have currently 1,658 students in our schools. There is a little bit of movement that happened this month. As you will see, we had 1,650 students in March. Most of the movement has been at the elementary school. We have 4 students that returned to in-person school, or who are returning now, who were homeschooled children. So this is also some of that movement. An interesting fact. So I want to also clarify about the previous year, April 2020. You will notice that it says not available, and that we did not have enrollment numbers. If you remember, we had just gone into school closures in March, and so we did not collect information for the April 2020 enrollment. So that is something just to note, and that's why we don't have those numbers. So I am now more than happy to answer questions about any of the reports that I've given.
Thank you very much, Beth. Zona, would you like to go first?
I just want to make sure I heard correctly. You said that if we have school closures, it will be determined by Mr. Santa Maria. Is that new with Desi?
No,
Because
it's
if I'm
the
not
same.
mistaken,
It's the same.
he didn't agree with us closing the schools in 2020, and that the school committee made the final decision to do that. Is that not true? Did I misunderstand that?
The closures were a combination. I mean, when there was a need to close the schools, there was a committee that met together to discuss the closures, but he was involved with that committee. So we will continue with that. There are no changes other than he will need to be involved to help us with if there's a need to look at school spread. We also have to involve DZ.
I understand his involvement. I just wanted to make sure and to clarify who makes the final decision. So
the final decision would be mine, basically, along with anybody in the committee who has the, we have a committee that comes together and discusses, but ultimately the decision is mine.
So I want the minutes to reflect that correction or clarification, please. I think that's very, very important. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the enrollment numbers. Sure. And the explanation for the change in the 4. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I have, Pauline.
Thank you. Thanks, Zona. Steve.
Yeah, I actually have a number of questions. I'll save the one that troubles me most till last. And I don't want you to put your screen back up, Beth. That's not necessary. And maybe I just misread it, but students inexcusably out more than 9 days was a category that to me looked pretty high. Is it, do you know, or does anybody know? Is it higher than it has been? Is it consistent with our past findings, numbers in that area?
I would have to do a little more research to that to see and make a comparison from previous years, clearly. But attendance is this is the first time that we've shared attendance in the district report card. I don't believe it was shared in previous years. So so I certainly want to look carefully at that.
I would appreciate that, because I know absenteeism was listed by the state, I think, as a problem for us a year ago. So please do follow up on that. Following up on something Zona asked about, in the document you provided about our plans for reopening, there's language that reads that we would go totally remote if, and I think I'm quoting, the community surpasses the threshold for allowable COVID-19 cases. My question is, what is that threshold?
It's never been determined. We do not have a number. There is no specific number, and that is why I have to speak with the Department of Public Health and with the Department of Education to make that determination. So,
okay, I ask because, as you know, I follow these figures daily, and we're in a spike community-wise, and Mr. Shaw has put a note up on the hospital website about where we're at. We've got B117 and variants, ANTS, variants on the island, which appears to be contributing to a significant spike. And I'm just wondering where that spike reaches at a community level. I understand, I think, what'll happen if we get numerous cases in school, but this was a community threshold, and again, we're headed for the red. So
I understand that your concern. I think in speaking with Mr. Santa Maria today, I think there is one big issue that we are not able to keep track of, and that is we have a lot more people on the island than we have. And again, we are still using those metrics with the lower population that was recorded in the 2010 census. And we are looking at many more people right now. So he is feeling that, you know, the hope is that we will see in the next few days things calming down. You know, I understand that there are a lot of different data points to that, but I will be sure to work with him and the school committee and any others to determine whether or not there needs to be closure. In the meantime, our percentage within the schools is still very low, and we are not seeing evidence of school spread. So we will continue as planned, as expected by the Department of Education.
Yeah, it is. I think that the concern that Roberto has with our island population is real, but I also think it's offset by something I learned from NCH a couple days ago, which is that the cases they report are not all the cases on the island. Anyone tested anywhere who lists a zip code of 02554 is listed by the state, but not included by NCH. And they also think there's a lot of home testing going on that is getting reported to the state, but not to NCH. So NCH's figures are the lowest possible number. And it's one of the things I think Mr. Santa Maria needs to keep in mind as well. What is the number of students in a class who test positive that would call for that whole class to be quarantined?
So we don't have a specific number because it will vary case by case. In some cases, an elementary class might have a number of students, 1 or 2 even, or perhaps 3 or 4. But because of the nature of the elementary student movement, both at recess and things like that, we may feel that it is safer for us to quarantine the whole class. But that will have to be determined by the by Sarah Brooks, by the school nurse, by the school administrators, and by me to determine whether or not it is important or worthwhile for us to do that. We have not needed to do that. We have only had one experience of 2 students in a class that were that had tested positive, and that was back in November before we ended up closing and staying closed until January. So we never actually did have to close that class because the whole district shut down.
I certainly accept relying on our nurses to make that decision. I just wondered if there was an actual number. No. Cohort D.
Yes.
Are there remote classes a set group of remote kids, or are they mixed into regular classes?
That is different school by school. In the elementary school and the intermediate school, they are in their own separate cohort and own separate classes. At the middle school, they also have their own separate classes, but at the high school, they are mixed in. Now, when the middle school returns, and I'm not going to speak for Mr. Horton, but I believe that there might be a shift because with more students returning, there will be a need for more in-person teachers. And so the cohort D numbers will be going down quite a bit. And in that case, we will be having them doing more of a hybrid model for cohort D. So there, it will look a little more like the high school. So please forgive me if I've said anything incorrect, Mr. Horton. You can go ahead and jump in if you need to.
Yes, through the chair, thank you, Dr. Hallett. You know, at NES and NIS, a classroom teacher teaches all the subjects. At the middle school and high school, if we have a handful of remote students, we can't afford to have a math remote teacher, an ELA remote teacher, a science remote teacher, social studies remote teacher. If you follow my thinking, if it was different grades, we'd have to designate 12 separate people just for remote. So they are spread and sprinkled in at middle school and high school, or will be.
Wondered about that. Thank you, Mike. Finally, And most troubling to me is the lunch aspect. The new plan calls for 6 feet at lunches. Now that's unmasked. I don't want to ask this as a question. Let me just state it as a concern. I would hope that we could do better than 6 feet most of the time if we're indoors. Outdoors is different, but indoors, 6 feet. I mean, I'm picturing kids at the cafeteria tables at the high school and the middle school sitting across from each other. They're not going to be 6 feet unless they're somehow alternating. So I'm not going to ask a question. I just want to express a concern with that aspect solely of our return plan. And I'm done.
If I can just speak to your concern, we are fully aware of the limitations that we have. However, we have plans in place to make sure that students will be eating at 6 feet. And in classrooms, the majority of our meals will still be offered in the classroom. So students will be at 6 feet in the classroom. We know the number of students that can eat safely in a classroom, and the additional overflow, so to speak, will be moving to alternate locations. But everyone will be at 6 feet. That is absolutely a requirement that we have to have. So we'll be sticking to that. So thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you, Steve. Tim.
I really don't have much to say. I want to delve into the school report because it's always fun to compare it with other schools. It can be very revealing. I'm very impressed at the graduation rate, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Amanda?
No questions. I just have one suggestion. I don't know if anyone's thought of this, but maybe for the lunches, you could do like half the class eats in like the first 15 minutes, and then they put their mask back on, and then the other class could eat, or the other half of the class could eat the other half. Suggestion.
Thank you, Amanda. That's a great suggestion. We have thought about that. So it is possible that we might look at that as well. We just don't want people to feel rushed for eating. We give our students half an hour for lunch. We know that it doesn't always take half an hour to eat, but we just want to make sure that we're not, forcing people to eat too quickly. So, but it's a great idea. And I think it could perhaps happen in some classrooms if that's the way it would work best. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. So some of the questions I had for the back to school have already been asked. So I'd like to dig into the district report card, if you don't mind. And I apologize, I didn't get to send my questions ahead of time, but there was so much material that came. I didn't have time to get it all read until really this morning. So what stuck out to me immediately is just 40% of our students' language, the English is not their first language. That is huge. I mean, I know that our Hispanic population is always teetered around 30 to 33%, but just looking at that number, it just jumped out at me, is really quite remarkable. And of course, my pet peeve, which is nothing to do with the school, it's the state on recognizing students of color, naming everybody has to be African American, which I think it would be a wonderful thing if we could get that changed at the state or federal level, because that is not an accurate way of portraying our students. I was looking at, I did circle the English language learners to see how high we are compared to the state. 16.3%. I think that is something that we've always been higher than the state. Question for you on average class size. I know we've got here 14.8, 17, 18.7. Do you have a rough idea of the percentage of classes throughout the schools that have 20 plus students in them? I mean, I know that not,
but certainly we can look for that information. Again, this was last year, so we could probably look at at that and provide those numbers. I would assume that we would be looking mostly, maybe I'm incorrect in this in saying so, but at middle and high school. I know our numbers are above 20 in many of those classrooms. So I'm happy to get that information to you.
That would be great, particularly as we are looking at returning to school. I think that that would be important information. Thank you.
Sure.
I know I had asked for a question, and I think Mandy is going to provide this tonight on the AP classes, but looking at the SAT and the school committee and staff have heard me ask this before and state this again, the SAT scores, and I appreciate it being broken down by demographics, but if we are truly 33% of Hispanic students, 13 students taking SAT is not good at all. It should be more around 32 students. And so I just want to bring that as a focus, because it's the same reasons that I bring up the AP scores, that yes, we pride ourselves on the number of students, but I don't think we can pride ourselves on the diversity of the students that are taking either of those two tests. So just a note, not a question. I think, yeah, something, if I'm reading this correctly on page 14, and I don't know if I am or not, but in the cohort graduation rates, is it accurate to say that in the 4-year graduation rate for Hispanic Latino, only 57.1% of the student body graduates in 4 years? Or am I missing that?
No, that is correct.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so as you look at that grid, we've got more work, obviously. And I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I think it's important to point that out. It continues, doesn't seem then in that case that it actually gets any better in the 4-year adjusted, because we have 50% of students still in school, and then the 5-year graduation rate is still high. If I, again, reading it correctly, only 55% of our EL students are graduating in 5 years. I know some of that is that we have traction of students coming in and out of high school, and I know the age group, it's harder to keep them in school because they're often leaving, certainly prior to season, to work. But I don't know if there's something that we can do through the community school or something we can do to help support these numbers, because.
If I may, Pauline, I think the numbers are a little higher than what you, I don't know if it's just because they're very small.
Okay, maybe.
If you look at the 5-year graduation rate, for example, I'm just going to use this as an example. Hispanic Latino, for example, is 65.5% graduated.
Oh, okay. I was looking at the EL number. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yes, you could also look at, yes, okay, you could look at EL number. So yes, I apologize. I thought we were looking at Hispanic.
That's okay. And then lastly, and again, this is something that I've mentioned before over the years, I'm on page 17. I'm not including the students who go into the military, but looking at 0 apprenticeship, 5.5 going into work, 10.9 other, and 2.3 unknown. That's around 19% of our graduating class. And I would love for us to dig a little deeper into the demographics as well as the stories of these students, because I really feel like I know the year that my oldest son graduated, which is 2015, we had 25% of our students who graduated who hadn't determined what their path was after high school. And I don't want to sound like I'm beating the same drum, but I remember that particular year, the majority of the students were Hispanic students. And so I'm challenging the school committee and the school to really come up with other programs that we can do to support kids as they're coming through high school, to offer them opportunities. And I know we've got the innovative pathways. That's only one avenue. But to me, and I don't know what other districts are. I hadn't looked, but to me, just to have that vagueness is not maybe perhaps providing the best we can for our student success. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want to add a little bit to that. You know, I believe that, you know, getting kids in with a guidance counselor early as CPS, helps them determine their path. I mean, I don't know how we do it. I know it requires hiring more staff to do that, but, you know, meeting twice a year, if that, with your guidance counselor when you're in high school, to me, it's a little bit of a late start. Kids need to start thinking about their future when they're in junior high. Do you want to go to college? You know, what are your interests? Are you just sick of school and you just want to work and you want to not be in it? Because that's a big part of it. That's a big part of why they do and don't take AP classes. You know, again, I know you guys are so tired of hearing about me and my education, but that's okay. You know, I never took an AP class. Yes, they were offered then, but that's not something I was interested in. I was an honor student in every sense of the word, top 10 in my class, maybe top 15 in my class. And that's not something I wanted. And then I didn't even test well on the ACT. We did ACTs in the South. And I was so upset. But I scored so high on the math portion of that test that I was able to skip college algebra when all of my friends that scored higher had to take college algebra. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel for different ones of us. And a big part of it is let no student go unturned or untouched. Every student needs to have the opportunity to talk to a guidance counselor one-on-one about what do they want for their life. This is probably the only person and the only time they get to do that because they may not come from a household that supports. You know what I'm saying? School is a very important part of a lot of people's lives. It's even the EL students. They need the encouragement, but they need the one-on-one time with an adult that can help steer them in the right direction before they get to high school. So when they get to high school, their path is kind of sort of mapped out because it starts in 9th grade. You know, from the classes you take in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th, you're setting your path to ready yourself for college and or the afterlife. I just want that to be in the record that, you know, we always come back to this, but a big part of it is guidance and touching every student. Don't let that one shy kid get by because, you know, they were too shy to set an appointment with their guidance counselor. And so they never took the time. And now here it is, their junior, senior year, and they may not have all their eggs in a row. Okay. That's just my input. I just feel like I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Zona. Okay, thank you, Beth, for your report. And thank you everyone for your questions. Now moving on to presentations and discussions, and Ms. Walden has been waiting very patiently. It is my delight to introduce Lily Walden, is a high school student, and she is going to do a presentation on the history of pandemics. Welcome, Lily.
Hi. So, as you all know, my name is Lily Weldon, and I want to start off by talking about why I decided to make this course for myself. So I, like many seniors, ran into an issue where I had a hole in my schedule and I didn't see many classes that really interested me. So I went to one of my favorite teachers and she and I constructed a course for me to dive into an interest of mine. And this fall, I will be attending Skidmore College as an anthropology major, and I'm very interested in researching the history of events and how they impact certain cultures. So I studied the early pandemics that shaped modern medicine, specifically Yersinia pestis. Next, please. You can click the little right arrow on the keypad if it works that way too. All right, so a brief overview of the bubonic plague. So the bubonic plague is a bacterial infection caused by the bacteria Yersinia pestis, and it was carried by rats on ships mostly and delivered to a lot of countries in Europe. Next. It is very similar to like the common cold and flu in that it really makes you not feel well. You get fevers, chills, malaise, headaches, muscle pain, stomach aches, all the good stuff. And what sets it apart from modern illnesses is that swollen lymph nodes occur. And I've been given a little chart of where the lymph nodes are in your body, and they're called buboes. They form. So that is the symptoms. Next, please. So the mortality rate back then in 541 AD and 1348 AD was typically 50%, which is a lot lower than a lot of people think of when they think bubonic plague. They think it's the most deadly thing in the entire world, but it wasn't, as I found. And in modern times, it's actually, there's a 100% survival rate for most people. And that is because of a reason I will talk about later. Next, please. So there's 3 types of plague I thought I should include. There's bubonic, pneumonic, and septicemic, and I'd like to think that they go in that order. Oh. Anyway, next, I guess. The plague of Justinian began in 541 AD in the time of Justinian running the Byzantine Empire. It came from Ethiopia in the 530s and spread to Pelusium in Egypt and the majority of the Byzantine Empire by 541 AD. Over 50 million people succumbed to the disease. And that's just an estimate because there are no records from that time. Next, please. So the Black Death is the event that most people know about when they think of the bubonic plague, and it happened in 1348. It started in the summer of 1347, and it is characterized as having multiple outbreaks over and over again, similarly to how we are constantly spiking in cases all around the US. And it was the most deadly of all the outbreaks that it had. Ballpark range of deaths is somewhere between 100 and 200 million people. Next, please. So now I'm going to shift to 2021, and I want to talk a little bit about where we are today. Next, please. So COVID-19, I found, mirrors the bubonic plague outbreaks in that we all just sort of panicked when it began, which understandable. It's something that we've never had to experience before. We've only ever read about it in history books. And it's the bubonic plague, very similarly to COVID-19, presented a time where there was a real lack of hope. Next, please. So to go along with the lack of hope, we managed to advance. So in the 1920s, we were in the middle of yet another outbreak of the bubonic plague, which I did not mention, mainly because it really only affected the countries in Asia, not the entire world. But in the 1920s, antibiotics were created, and they were used on battlefields and introduced into the medical world. And personally, after doing my research, I came up with a little bit of a theory that it's because of antibiotics we don't have outbreaks of the bubonic plague or many similar bacterial infections today. So there is an upside to a lot of these really bad outbreaks. So I hope there is something similar for COVID-19. Next, please. So how do we grow? In doing my research, I realized that we are not all that different from the people in the times of the plague of Justinian and the Black Death. There's actually a much worse disease that is spreading in our world today, and it is judgment. When COVID-19 began, the people that were getting sick were often judged, and they were thought to have been reckless, and it's all their fault. And sometimes we need to remember that we're all just human at the end of the day, and that sometimes things are out of our hands. And that's something that I learned. And I feel like I've grown as a person after doing this research assignment. It was good. And so next, please, that moves on to my next topic. the benefits of research. I hope that a lot of students today after me decide to do a research project like this, because it is a wonderful option that I was allowed to have. It's something that I feel as though a lot of students who are truly interested should do, because it's so enlightening and it is definitely worth all the time and effort. Next. So research I found was very challenging at first because I'd never done it on such a grand scale, but I faced challenges and I faced successes, and I came out in the end. It was good. Research actually became one of my favorite things afterwards, because I would just dive into all these little rabbit holes and find new information that I didn't think was out there. And there are a lot of places to look for this information. Next. Fortunately, I had a great selection of databases to look through. Project Gutenberg became my best friend when it came to primary sources. And then the school gave me access to Gale, Britannica, and Google Scholar. Unfortunately, I did not have access to JSTOR at the time that I did my research project, but I have learned since that JSTOR is now available to most students in the school system, so that makes me very happy. So, thank you. And these are my sources.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lily.
I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any, or if you guys have time for it.
Absolutely. Let me go to Tim first.
Lily, that was very good. There is still bubonic plague and ground squirrels in California, so we can't let our guard down too much. It occurs so infrequently it can be missed. I enjoyed it. I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Zona?
Lily, that was a fantastic presentation, and welcome to your first school committee meeting. I want to say, you know, getting older, I feel like I have the bubonic plague all the time, except for the bubon under armpits. I don't have that yet. What you said in the end is absolutely right. There is a stigmatism and a shame associated with this COVID-19 thing. And for that reason, there are people that don't come forward to even get tested. And that's what sets the fear, I think, out there in the world. If people would just understand, this is something that we had no control over. I have called it a plague from day one, because I'm a Bible reader. And for me, all things pointed to plague. I think if we can just get past it, this is something that we had no control over. It is something that has happened to our world. How could we even have expected it? All we need to do is do all the right things to get rid of it, to get it under control. Your research, wonderful, just wonderful. And I thank you for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zona. Steve.
Yeah, that was fun. You make this historian's heart grow 3 sizes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Amanda?
That was awesome. It was so cool that you had the opportunity to do that and connect it to what we're going through today. And I definitely agree that we should have more opportunities for students to do this kind of thing, because it looked very helpful.
Thank you. I love doing it.
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, I mean, to kudos to you for going to your teacher and asking to do this project when you realized you had a gap in your schedule. And I mean, it's perfectly on point and timely. And I think your point about judgment is very important, because as Zona said, this COVID-19 has really formed a lot of judgment and fear around people. And so I'm so happy that you did this, and I understand that you presented to the high school, and I'm really glad that we have you here at the school committee. Mrs. Vassal, did you have a comment that you wanted to make?
Yes, if I may, through the chair,
Yes,
I just wanted to say to Lily, thank you for having the courage to do this, and thank you to the school committee for allowing that she make this presentation. This was the last step of her project. When we talked about this back in the fall, I said there had to be a big finale, so this was it for her. Thank you so much, and nice job, Miss Lily.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Tough act to follow here, Jennifer, but I'd like to ask Jennifer Raybould to come and do the K-12 art presentation, please.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and the art teachers with us here tonight are going to be doing the presenting, but I'm driving the bus, so to speak. So hang on just a second as I share my screen. Hang on a minute here. All right, can everyone see that nice palette there?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to start with some of the DESE regulations that applied specifically to art classes and other classes where students were using lots of hands-on materials. Obviously, students have to wash their hands, wear masks, and maintain distancing as they do in all classes. But there were a lot of rules about minimizing and modifying shared equipment, reducing class sizes to that, getting additional pieces of equipment and different workstations, having students work in pairs or small groups, not sharing equipment that's hard to disinfect and clean. So there have definitely been just a lot more cleaning required in general. So there have been a lot of adjustments that the teachers have had to make. I'm going to present elementary school because Sue Grant is not able to be with us tonight. But her goals in kindergarten, in elementary school, kindergarten, first and second grade, have been to give students opportunities to safely explore materials and instill a love of creating and appreciating art, both in person and at home. And she's had to do some of that Zoom in room that a lot of the students have been doing. She, for most of the year, has been on a cart, not able to use the art classroom because they wanted to make sure that rooms were not mixing with different groups of students. And each trimester she taught a different grade level, as we did with music and the other specials, just to minimize the exposure to the number of students. So in first trimester, she had kindergarten, second trimester, she had second grade, and the third trimester, she's been with first grade. She's had to change materials, so using more materials that are not as messy because of cleaning up and things like that. Here are some examples of some of the student work. And I'm going to just escape from this for a moment to show you. This was one of the lessons that she taught, which was about Faith Ringgold and her quilts. And so this is an example. This is a screenshot from her Schoology page with instructions that were recorded that students could see if they're at home or in school. And she did this for all of her different units. And here is just a very brief look at some of the artwork that her students did in kindergarten. So these are some of the birdhouse collages that they did. So that was kindergarten, or that was not Nantucket Elementary School. And now we're going to see the intermediate school with Jessica Held. Jess, can you talk to us about your work?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you to the school committee for inviting the art teachers of this district to share our story of what we have done during this crazy time. So there have been many changes, but some changes that are noted that we cannot do this year that may change are kilned clay, sharing materials, group tables, using the art room, which actually just changed, which is awesome. That changed last month. So we are now all back in the art room. I'm happy, the kids are happy. And art show nights where families can come in and see student work. So some things that we have done in replace or instead of the above listed are making art supply packets for students to bring home or have individual packets in school. The use of Seesaw, which I will talk about in a moment. Socially distanced desks and tables. They had desks inside the classroom. And then when we got back into the art room, we have large tables where each student is at their own individual space with more than 6 feet, which is great. And of course, alternative materials and projects for our remote days. Next, I just want to briefly discuss the changes made to the curriculum and instruction during these times. The first thing, just like Sue, I've only been teaching to 1 grade level per trimester. So that means that instead of teaching to 300 plus students each week, I am now teaching to 100-ish students per week. So that was a huge safety and it has worked so far. I do miss my students who I haven't seen since the beginning of the school year, I must say. Being on a cart, I was on the art cart for the majority of the year, but that also changed when my room was open. A huge increase of technology, lots of how-to videos, and that really helped with blended learning and for students all spaced out in the art room. So students in the back of the art room could also see well on the smartboard. And we could all be distanced. I used to have all students enter the art room, sit on a rug, and we would all chat together. And now that we have to be so spread apart, technology has played a wonderful role in getting students what they need. We've definitely used a lot of Seesaw, and Seesaw is a tool that we use to present work completion. So I know that students are getting their work done, and to also build art portfolios, which is lovely. And this is kind of in replace of inviting the parents into the school for art nights. And now they have online portfolios where parents can log into their student Seesaw account and then see their work and can comment on the work as well as read the comments that I have written. Balancing cohorts has been huge. I know Steve asked a question about that earlier, about the different cohorts. A's seem to always be ahead. They were the 4 days a week in the art room. And then the cohorts B and C were twice a week in the art room. So it was quite tricky with that, but I figured it out. And now that I figured it out, we're all going to be back on Monday, which is incredible. I have rather really spent a lot on wellness, on teamwork, identity, and all those other lovely things. Let's see, it's just a little bit small. All right, asynchronous lessons and playlists. I think Jennifer can pull up an example of a playlist. And these playlists are still given to students. They're super helpful for students working online, especially, and when they have to do asynchronous work, which means independent work, or as my students call it, art homework, which actually some still request to have, which is awesome if they don't have art anymore. So this is an example of a Keith Haring playlist. You'll see images on the left-hand side, the activity and the learning objective in the middle, and the directions on the right-hand side. And then also the minutes that should be spent on each section. So therefore the students have an idea of how long they need to take on each designated task. Perfect, thank you, Jen. Excellent. So my hope and dream this year, or just the end of COVID really, is getting all the kids back in the art room, being as safe as we can, and hopefully at some point doing things such as printmaking and things like those tools that are really expensive or they're harder to wash, and sanitizing between classes and getting them going with their real art materials that they're used to. Here we go. Let's see. Also, blended learning has been crazy. While being on the art cart, I was doing in-person teaching as well as teaching students at home at the same time in a 40-minute block, which was challenging, but I did it, and props to all those teachers who are still doing it. I know how difficult it is, and I know it's just as hard as for the kids that are at home. So bravo for everybody who has done such a great job with blended learning this year. And lastly in this category is coordinating material pickups, delivering supplies when needed. So if students were unable to pick up, I know other teachers as well drove around the community and did the drop-offs when needed. And hopes and dreams are to just have all the kids back, have them back. And Monday is looking very sunny, and I'm very happy to have our students in our building. On the next slide, it is some examples of student work. So a lot of the black and white drawing that you see, such as the digital contour line drawings, the optical illusions, perspective drawing, a lot of that was done at home. We had limited supplies if it was a sudden remove from in person, and then the next day we were told everybody's out of the building. We had to make it work. So this meant modifying materials. It meant using nature sometimes to create art. And it was a make it work moment. And most students had some sort of paper and a pencil. And that is some work from home. And then the clay totem poles are an example of air dry clay. The reason why we can't use the kiln clay, or we hadn't been able to, is because when that is sent home, it becomes quite fragile and it breaks very easily. So at the intermediate level, we stuck with air dry clay, and that hopefully might change. And in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see some panels. And I'm really proud of my fifth graders who learned about activism in their classrooms and everything that's happening in our world. And it was part of their curriculum. So I integrated and I worked with the fifth grade team on introducing activism through murals. So this is just a couple examples. If Jennifer just wants to go through some of the slides of different activists, questions posed to students, you know, what does this mean to you? Things that are relevant to today. And then inside their classrooms, the classroom teacher had each student select an activist that they were interested in representing. And we as artists created, the original idea was to create a huge mural, but then we got sent home. So instead we decided to work on shingles, housing shingles. And the plan is to take all the individual housing shingles and put them together to create a huge mural that hopefully will stay at NIS as a permanent install. So the fifth graders knew what they were getting into. They were very proud of their work. They learned a lot about our world and what's happening and standing up for what they believe in. And I'm super proud of them. So that's what I have to share for you. And again, thank you so much for having us tonight.
Thanks, Jess. All right, Mara at CPS.
Hi, my name's Maura Wendelkin. I'm the Cyrus Pierce Middle School art teacher. It's really fantastic to be here. Thank you so much for having the art department throughout the district to present. Jess, I loved hearing about those shingles. What a fantastic project. I can't wait to see the full install. Sounds like a fabulous way to collaborate with distance. Okay, so here's a picture of our studio. In a typical year, our studio has group tables. We have 5 tables with 6 seats. Typically, that's how our studio is set up. This year, we are distanced.
Did we lose her?
Able to hear me? It's saying that my internet's unstable. Are you guys able to hear me?
We can now, yes.
Okay. Typically 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students spend time in the art studio throughout the day. And so we're working separately by grade. So 6th grade went first in the art studio for the first half of the year. And now 7th grade is in the art studio for the second half of the year. I've had them since the beginning, February 1st. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I have for that slide. So on the next slide, some of the things that have changed was 6th graders had sketchbook bags in the classroom, and we had them in packets, and they did some of their process work and brainstorms, and Cohort D and A and B and C all had those. For 7th grade, we're working with a digital sketchbook in Schoology where they'll post some of their hand-drawn or digitally drawn concepts and put them in their Schoology. We're using it as a portfolio. And the materials that we're using in class are, if they're shared materials, they're sanitized in between each time they're used by different students, and then materials that are individual to each student. New things that we've kind of been working with are individual paper folding crafts, which I not really spent time with, and my students are really enjoying. Things like origami, and we made a in-classroom install of snowflakes. So my students have really enjoyed that type of work. We created some origami hand-painted hearts and made a group installation that I'll show in a moment. And so that's something I want to bring forward. The students just really enjoyed that, and they like that it's something they could do in the classroom, make something together, and then take that concept home and share it with their family members. So social emotional learning games are something that I spent a lot of time in the remote and digital drawing games. So we did ways to connect when we were separate. So when we were in full remote learning and my students, they missed their, interacting with their peers. We played games where the students could communicate verbally and through imagery, and it was really fantastic. Pictionary and Thorns and Roses. And they also did some digital drawing. So I'm going to show. Another thing that I've really brought into the practice is fresh air breaks, and which my students have expressed it's like really meaningful to them, like just spending time outdoors when we can, and even if it means like walking through the courtyard when we're in passing, and just having that fresh air break to reset. So that's something I want to bring forward too. It's really positive. And then the student-led hallway displays, they've done such a great job. So my next slide has some images of student work, which I'm excited to share with you guys. This is some 6th grade work from the first half of the year. We continue with a project that's a tradition at our school, the Local Animals Project, where students learn about an animal that lives on the island, and they do research and they get source images, and then they create a beautiful watercolor. Typically that project continues into the year, but I was only with them for half the year. So I hope to pick up a similar type of project where we get to collaborate next year and do some large scale painting. But these are their individual watercolors. And then this is our 7th grade digital design emoji. You can see some examples of the emojis that they created using some digital drawing tools. And then
Mara, we can't hear you.
Planner, and they're very proud of this work and very proud of this that their art will be printed on, and so these are not the final chosen ones. Those will be determined this week, but those are some of the examples of the work. And then I have one final slide of student work. And here's our students installing their own artwork, and some close-ups of the close-ups of their install with the origami hearts and messages about what they love about our school. So these images were taken by Adrian Lombardi of the Students in Action in our studio. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mara. And now we have the high school. Kate Merlini is here, and is Meryl Mason here?
No, Jen, I'm sorry. She couldn't make it tonight.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Kate.
So thank you once again, all of you, for having us tonight. It's my pleasure. I'm not going to repeat. There's a lot of, similar things we've all experienced as art educators during this time, in terms of distribution of supplies and losing our shared communal, highly social table arrangements, the multiple cohorts, everything you've essentially heard. So I don't really want to repeat myself. I did think it was important to include a few student quotes for you tonight. We've really had an emphasis on connection with our students, and I give my students a survey at the end of each semester. And I've been doing more of that this term because of the pandemic, but I try to get feedback always. And it's just very interesting to me. I try to get feedback about my classes, but this year it's been really about, I've tried to get feedback about specifically pandemic style learning so that we can adapt and reflect as we continue, and hopefully not for much longer in this mode. But I just wanted to note the importance that art occupies for so many of our students. As you can see here, as a student says, it's the only thing that makes me want to go to school. It is the only thing I look forward to. We hear this all the time. Another quote I received on one of my surveys: I really love having art class in my schedule. It's a way to de-stress and unwind from the typical core class load and allows you to get more creative. Here are some student examples from curriculum that we developed during, specifically for remote learning. I think the committee has had a chance to look at these slides prior, or you have a copy of this, so I won't go into detail. There's one, and the pandemic project, Jennifer, that I was going to touch on. As you can tell from the name, it was developed specifically in reflection to give the students a chance to reflect and create based on their experiences and feelings about what we've all been through. So this is a project that my Ceramics 2 students are working on right now. So they haven't finished. And Jen, if you don't mind going just to the beginning, and I don't know, hopefully committee, if you're interested in, looking at this yourselves in more depth, you can, but the gist of the assignment is right here in the banner. And essentially the focus is for the students to make some sort of commemorative object regarding their experience for the pandemic. So rather than keep to one definition of a commemorative object, as the slide says, for this project they're creating, and this is in ceramics, so it's a 3-dimensional object. You'll be creating a monument, memorial, token, keepsake, memento, trophy, shrine, plaque, remembrance, tribute, cairn, souvenir, essentially some sort of commemorative object. And thanks, Jen. I'm not going to go into depth with that. Again, that's that's the project the kids are working on right now. But what I did want to share with you was one of the first steps in that project was for us to do a group brainstorming, and that was Zoom and Room. So we had kids at home, kids in school doing this together, and we did a group brainstorm on several components of reflection on the pandemic. And I thought I'd share this list of buzzwords and catchphrases that we collectively as a group collected, because I think everyone who's in this meeting can relate to this list. It's kind of a word salad. And to me, when I read it back to the students, it read like a poem in a way, a pandemic poem, if you will. All right, buzzwords and catchphrases. in the past year of our lives. Pre-COVID, cohorts, no traveling, vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, remote learning, distance learning, COVID, social distancing, masks, 6 feet, sanitize, testing, positive, negative, Google Meets, Zooms, toilet paper, TikTok, canceled, capacity, curbside pickup, hoax, anti-maskers, Wi-Fi, no Wi-Fi, you're muted, you're not muted, we can't see your screen, I'm going to share my screen with you, can you hear me? Quarantine, travel order, stress baking, hand sanitizer, hybrid, new normal. So as you can tell, we're having fun even with the pandemic project. The next slide, Jen, thank you. We have, even in pandemic times, we've had students enter some competitions and win some prestigious awards. Nazaire Thompson has won a gold Scholastic Award at the national level, and Oscar Waldman has won the Dean's Choice Award. We currently have 5 seniors going to art school next year. These are, what you're seeing are some examples of Merrill Mason's digital classes and a picture of in her classroom. And she's got example playlists, which again, I'm not going to go into detail, but if anyone would like any further, please let me know. Excuse me, put me in a room full of teenagers and I'm fine, but put me on a screen in front of adults and I have to guzzle water. So as you can see on the left there, that is a list of the classes that 2 of us teach currently and the courses that we offer at Nantucket High School. One of the, if you don't mind, I made some notes today and kind of reflecting on the idea that I was going to be presenting to you. And it'll just take a moment. If you let me start by saying that I have, and forgive me for reading, but it's just, I'll be able to better communicate with you. Let me start by saying that I have a most definite implicit bias in favor of the arts. I wholeheartedly believe that we in the public academic world routinely underestimate the power of creativity. For our students, the arts provide a means of not only creative expression, but that of self-expression. A means for students to explore identity and to build self-esteem and self-empowerment. Creative project-based learning provides students the opportunity to not only problem solve, but to come up with individualized, unique solutions. As tough as this pandemic has been, as an art educator, I am humbled to have been able to offer our students a means of expression that is individualized, that is equitable, and in the case of studio arts is hands-on or minimizes screen time when screen time has been at a maximum. As an art student at Nantucket Public Schools, the arts provide a balance to what traditional academics have to offer. Arts classrooms provide open-ended problem solving. The answers are unique to the individual. The arts have the ability to give students a voice where they often don't have one. Consider the power or potential of the arts to help navigate socio-cultural differences and inequities. Excuse me, again, you're grown-ups. This is what happens to me. Our entry-level classes create opportunities for our EL and special education students to be heard, to have a voice, to have discourse, in other words, to be on equal footing with their peers. The arts are so often overlooked and underutilized as a vehicle to help weave together the fabric of school culture. The arts provide an equal platform for expression and exploration. Whether you're a privileged academic high flyer, a newcomer struggling to learn a new language and adapt to a new culture, or if your learning is differently abled, the arts have the potential to benefit all students. Nantucket High School has had 2 art teachers since, I believe, its inception. When we had a school population of 250 students, we had 2 art teachers. We're now at more than over 500 students. We still have 2 visual art instructors. And it is my understanding that according to the guidance department, we need more elective offerings for our high school population. In preparation for our presentation, we were given prompts, one of which was, what are our hopes and dreams for after the pandemic? And I would say that for me as an art educator, I'm hoping that the power and the potential of what our classes have to offer is acknowledged and utilized by expanding our program and adding an additional staff member to help create more sections and therefore more access to the arts at the high school level. All of our students deserve access to this form of enrichment. So thank you so much for listening to that. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Kate. Jen, are you anything to finish up?
So thank you so much to the art teachers who put so much time into sharing that with you. And I guess we'll take any questions at this point.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. That was quite a presentation, and the passion is just so obvious as hearing from all of you, and I want to be in all of your classes. Steve, would you like to go first?
It is indisputable that during an extraordinarily difficult year, your students are very fortunate to have you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Tim.
I'm impressed by the work, actually from kindergarten on. I think it's interesting, and I think I'm amazed at how well the quality of the work is. Thanks.
Amanda?
I'm so glad that we're able to continue offering art classes even with all the restrictions, because art is so important. I've always loved all my art classes. It's always a nice break from the craziness of the day, and it's so important to have that break, especially with COVID. So thank you for everything you do. I've always appreciated the opportunity to express myself and be creative in the art room.
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, the arts are so incredibly important for our students. And I'm, starting to listen to the presentation and then seeing you going around with the carts, and I'm thinking, how on earth are they possibly doing this with all of the supplies that you need for all of the children? Thank you. Thank you for just making the most out of it. I know it couldn't have been easy. I know it hasn't been easy, but I've had the opportunity of popping into NIS to Jessica's class just briefly a couple of times, and I know the energy that you create in your classroom, and it seems like you are obviously able to continue that same effort. So thank you, Jessica and Moira and Kate. We're so lucky to have you, and I too am so impressed with the work, and I love the mural idea. I can't wait to see that. But it just shows how arts can really bring in a blend of learning and incorporate so much into the creativity. So thank you. This has really been a wonderful way to round out our meeting today. So thank you. And Kate, if you would allow, I would love for you to send what you just read. If you would send to me, please. That would be lovely if you would. Thank you. Wow. Okay, it's inspired me to get out some paints, do a Bob Ross. Okay, I'd like to now ask Mandy Bassel, please, to report on the dropout rate. Hi, Mandy.
Hi, Chairperson Proch, thank you so much. And yes, thank you so much for letting me go after the art presentation. Certainly a tough act to follow, and what great artwork our students are doing. I always like going down to Ms. Merlini and Ms. Mason's classes to see the talents of our students. So when when I was asked to take a look at the dropout rate, I went to the DESE and pulled our information from the DESE reports that were made, and also worked with Joanne Johnson to kind of sort out the data. And I hope that I am presenting it in a way that it is easy for you to understand and interesting as well, because I found some of the information interesting. Jen, if you'll go to the next slide. So for the 2019-2020, as of June 2020, the DESE has us reported as 533 actively enrolled students at Nantucket High School in grades 9 through 12. We had 7 students who were reported as dropouts, which was 1.3% of our total student population. Of those 7, 1 was grade 10, 4 grade 11, and 2 were grade 12. So I wanted to just break that down just a little bit so that we could see, the students, and try to put a little more information and background to our students. Of the 7, 4 were categorized as economically disadvantaged, and 1 of the 7 students was in the students with disabilities category. 5 of the 7 students were English language learners. And what I found interesting about that, and I worked with Ms. Cooney on this today, and she and I had a nice conversation about it, is that that's 9% of our L population, which last year we had 55 students reported as L students, which is 2% above the L dropout rate for the state of Massachusetts. Of the 7 students, 2 were female, 5 were male, 2 of the 7 were white, and 5 were Hispanic or Latino. Additionally, and I found this was really important, and I would like to thank Ms. Pissarro in the guidance department for keeping some really accurate records so that we could kind of track a little bit on our students. Of the 7 students, 3 entered the workforce, 2 left and did not notify the school of what their plans were. 1 student was considered graduated from Jamaica, and 1 of the 7 actually has returned to school this year. In working with Ms. Johnson, she and I kind of looked at the numbers, and we thought it was interesting to bring forward for the last 10 years. This is the number of students that were reported to the DESE as dropouts. And I apologize, I probably should have gotten the school total population as well. But I found it interesting that 2 of the school years we had 10 students each. And then other than 2018, 2019, where there were only 3, it looks like the numbers have been rather consistent year to year as far as the total number of students reported as dropouts. And I would suspect that if we dug a little deeper into some of those numbers, we would also find that from one year to the next, some of those students probably returned to the school in order to finish their diploma. The next slide. I also found it interesting that where our students went to. So for 2019, 2020, we had 14 students who transferred out of state. And so I listed the states and where they transferred, including Denmark, Brazil, and Jamaica, just because I found that information interesting where our students actually went to when they left Nantucket. And then we had 8 students who transferred in-state, and they went to Hyannis, Everett, Sheffield, Northampton, and Harwich. The Northampton student actually went to a private school there. In breaking down for current status of what we have for students this year, 2020, 2021, to date, we have 524 students actively enrolled. 4 students enrolled for our public school system over the summer, but didn't actually start on day 1. 3 students have dropped out. 1 specifically left to enter the workforce. We've had 24 students since the beginning of school year transfer out of state, and 10 students have transferred in state. So a couple of things that I wanted to share, because it does look like that our L population is the students that we most need to work with in retaining so that they do not drop out of school. Kelly Cooney and I attended a dropout prevention convening for L students last week. One of the keynote speakers that we had was Dr. Lorna Rivera. She is a previous school committee member. She worked in the Boston Public Schools and some other spots, but a couple of things that came up during the convening were some suggestions that we found interesting that we believe we can implement here in Nantucket. Jen, if you can go to the next slide, please. So this was a chart when we were looking at Pillar 4 as far as a plan for success for our L students. And I'll just highlight a couple of the things that I found interesting here. Helping the students to plan a clear path for success through high school, as well as what their next steps will be once they graduate, and particularly making it a priority of participating in school life for English learners. So one of the things I think that I have most heard this year since I started at Nantucket is, looking to find ways to make sure that our L students feel included just like any other student in the building. I do want to put a shout out to our ESL teachers at the high school, Ms. Townsend and Mr. Duran, who have really taken this to heart and have provided opportunities for our students after school and even during our school breaks. Ms. Erickson, yes, thank you. On this particular slide, and looking at selected recommendations based on what the DESE is seeing in their data, is rethinking schedules, ensuring content is culturally responsive, which we already are working on that at the high school in looking at our literature. And yesterday, thank you to Marita Scarlett for presenting a nice presentation on addressing implicit bias in our classrooms. So we are trying to take a look at some of the suggestions that are coming across. And if you'll go to the next slide, you'll see specifically. So these are some of the plans that we have already started, are in progress, and what we hope to have planned going forward. When we worked on the program of studies, Ms. Cooney worked with our math and science departments to do some revision of courses, the foundation courses to support our L students. Ms. Townsend has created a new course that will support our L students in completing the personal finance requirement. We have had professional development for SEI instructional strategies. It has been proposed that we hire an SEI coach to help support instructional strategies for next school year. We have parent information nights planned, which Chairperson Proch, you'll be happy to know that that specifically is to help parents understand about our honors level and AP level classes and what the benefit is for our L students to actually enroll and participate in those classes. I've talked with Tracy Roberts about partnering with her to make sure that the L students, whenever, if they have a need sometimes to leave because they do need to enter the workforce, but we would like to support them in partnering with the community school and possibly completing their GED. And we have talked with Dr. Hallett on what do we do about trying to include a bilingual district clinician for support for our L students. We just had a situation come up at the high school within the last week that we have seen that there is a huge need that our students, our L students specifically, our Spanish speaking students, our newcomers who have trauma when they come to us, and they need someone that they can talk to without necessarily always having to have a translator present. So we are hoping that at some point in the near future that we'll be able to include a bilingual clinician to the district. So that's what I have on our dropout information. I do have some information on our AP courses if you'd like for me to go ahead and go forward with that.
Sure, yes, please, Mandy.
Ms. Erickson, could you go ahead and put that back up, because I did add some slides, and I will share this with the school committee after, but I thought it would be easier for you to see this than just to hear me. So if you go to the next slide.
I'm sorry, I thought I had the most recent presentation,
okay,
but I don't see one after
that's okay.
questions.
I can just read it. I can read it to you. So in looking at our AP courses for this school year, 2020-2021, we have offered 10 AP courses for our students. 8 of those courses are in-person courses and 2 through VHS. Of the 8 courses that we have offered, we have 131 students who are taking the courses. And the way that it's reported to the DESE whenever they do the SIMS data, that equals 239 course opportunities. And the way that that works out is that we have 2 students who are taking 4 AP courses this year, 29 students taking 3 AP courses, 44 students taking 2 AP courses, and 56 taking 1. Of the 131 students, 10 are 10th grade, 67 students are in the 11th grade, 54 students are in the 12th grade. And if we look at the breakdown of ethnicity, we have 74% of our students who are white, 6% Black, 7% Hispanic, 5% Asian, and 8% mixed race. So again, to Chairperson's approach earlier point, we definitely need to reach out to our minority students and encourage them to consider our AP classes and you know, the honors level classes as well. And that's what we have.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mandy, for adding that onto your presentation tonight. Tim, questions, comments? You're muted, Tim.
I am always concerned about students we're getting in late middle school and high school that primarily, not to identify, but Hispanic students, and they really don't have an opportunity to graduate. They're behind the 8 ball, and I think these are the kids that drop out. And we have to find a better way to address these kids, whether we work with the community school to set up a better GED program or do a lot of coaching. I mean, this is the group I see is in the biggest trouble.
I absolutely agree. And that's why Ms. Cooney and I have spent quite a bit of time working this this year to try to plan for ways to offset that.
Right. Thank you, Mandy. Steve.
Yeah, I'd just add to what Tim said. It's not just our Hispanic students.
Right.
The page that jumped out at me was the 74% white in AP courses and middle single digits in all our other cultures. And those cultures are half our students, the way our demographics are set up now. Now, Mandy, I hear you, you're jumping all over it, but that really jumps off the page. And I think we've got to find other ways to encourage those students to be taking that next step. Stay on it. Thanks.
I completely agree, Steve. And I had a meeting probably earlier in the month of March with a couple of representatives from the DESE. And one of those, one of the people actually had worked in Chelmsford City School District. And he suggested that having parent information nights to help parents understand, like identifying those students that we believe have the capability and the potential to excel in honors and AP level classes, but invite those parents and help them understand what the benefit is of taking those courses. Because what we're finding, or what I'm learning, is that it could simply be that family doesn't necessarily understand what the benefit is of the more rigorous courses.
I would agree with you, Mandy, on that. And as I think it's already stated earlier tonight, starting in middle school is really, I think, important. So thank you, Steve, for your question. Amanda.
I think it also might be helpful to kind of like break down the specifics of the AP and honors classes and like, I guess, present it to the students so they know kind of what to expect, and maybe even have like current students in the classes talk to them and just be like, it's really not that scary, like you can do this, that kind of thing.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think changing the way we've done it, because obviously, and you have had evening presentations to parents, but I'm thinking that the demographic that we're missing here haven't come obviously to an evening presentation for all. So I think we've just got to look differently and maybe have more teacher input and have conversations with students, as was stated before, about what it's like and what the expectations are. I think we would see an increase in enrollment, or would hope to at least. So thank you for that. And thank you for such a detailed dropout rate information. I mean, it just, when I first got it, I was like, wow, it just was so detailed. And it is interesting to see that there's always a story behind the numbers. And so I found that very helpful. So thank you, Mandy.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to subcommittee work. Any meetings, policy meetings, safety, security, scholarships? Anyone have anything to report? I can see Steve on my screen. I can't see Tim at the moment. Okay, not seeing you raise your hand at all. I will just report I'm going to attend tomorrow virtually a legislative breakfast. It's a mask breakfast on legislative advocacy. I think the topics are public policy, COVID funding, and legislative priorities. So hopefully I'll be able to report back on that afterwards. And, after the ILT did a presentation last meeting to us, I did pull out the resolution, the anti-racism resolution that we all voted on back in June. And there is a piece, I think Ms. Cooney actually focused on that in her comment tonight around professional development. So I would like just to ask the school committee's permission for me to work on looking, and we can all look at different options for professional development. I know that the leadership team is in the midst or has just finished something. So Beth, I'd like to talk to you about that and learn a little bit more about that. I have been on the MASC site and I've come up with a couple of resources, but I think that's something that perhaps we could do during the summer as a group, maybe do a workshop on that. But I do think that that's important for us to do. Amanda, your report, please.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of an update about graduation. The plans haven't really been finalized or anything yet. We do have several ideas that are being talked about that we're kind of staying hopeful for. The first idea would be an outdoor graduation ceremony on the football field with the parents and the bleachers and then the kids on the field. And then there would be a podium kind of facing everyone else. And depending on weather, of course, and the state of COVID, at the time, there will be a backup plan similar to what went on last year, which was really successful. And we're also working to continue the car parade again for this year. And then we're also looking into having a senior ball as well. The location is not determined yet, just because of capacity in certain places and all of that good stuff. And then the powder puff game that we talked about doing has been canceled for this year, just because bringing the two different classes together for the game just creates an unnecessary opportunity for COVID to spread. And we wouldn't want to jeopardize how successful the sports have been so far this year.
Well, that sounds promising that you've got lots of ideas and conversation and planning. I really hope for everybody that all of what you've just mentioned is possible. And I know, like last year, everybody just made the best of the situation, but I'm hopeful with you, Amanda, that we'll be able to at least incorporate some of those ideas for graduation and the rite of passage for your seniors. Thank you. Moving on to the horizon. Let me just pull it up here. We have, for the 15th, we have Veritas presentation, school choice participation. LPAC is presenting. Special Needs Advisory Council I have on there, and then the timeline for the superintendent's evaluation. I think Beth will work on the agenda timing. I just want to be conscious that I know we have a lot to get through in our meetings, but I also want to be aware of timing as well. So that's what we have currently on the horizon. Any comments from Tim or Steve?
No, just that the Veritas presentation is timely. For those of you who are not aware, they have another issue out today. I received 19, count them, 19 emails of the articles in this particular issue. So I have tomorrow morning well planned.
Good. Make sure you make your coffee first.
And could I just say to Amanda as well, boy, I hope you can pull off this outdoor idea. I don't want to throw cold water on it, but you heard me earlier, we're surging these new variety of the viruses. So having backup plans, very good idea. Thank you for working all that out.
Thanks, Steve. Well, seeing no other comments for discussion, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Tim?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Steve?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Thank you. And Pauline, aye. Thank you, everybody.
And hi, Maura.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe. Thank you.